Have you ever thought about how your diet affects your brain? In this video, I want to share with you some information I've learned recently, which could not only protect you against long-term brain degeneration, dementia, Alzheimer's, that kind of scary stuff, but also help you deal with more immediate conditions such as insomnia, anxiety, depression, moodiness, lack of focus and concentration, that kind of thing. Now, I've spent the last 10 years thinking about thinking, exploring topics like NLP, clean language, metaphor, exploring how the body as well as the brain thinks, discovering about how we've not only got a brain in our heads, but one in our hearts and one in our guts. I know a lot about how people think, and as a coach, I know a lot about how to influence how people think. I work with people who are stuck, I get them moving, I get them achieving the stuff they've dreamed of doing. But I'd never thought about how diet affected my brain until I had my recent experience, which persuaded me this is something that you need to pay attention to. October 2013, so that's 3 or 4 months ago, I decided that I would try the Paleo diet. Now, it wasn't even for me at the time. It was actually an attempt to help my husband lose weight. But I thought, we'll give this a go. So what we did was we removed all grains from our diet, including oats, which we'd continued to eat. And we dramatically reduced the remaining carbohydrates in our diet by removing most legumes from our diet. You think that's a pretty small tweak, you were already eating pretty healthily. But the effects on my thinking were pretty immediate and pretty dramatic. Within 2 weeks, I noticed that it had gone quiet on the inside. As if there'd been a battle raging, like one of those big battle scenes from The Lord of the Rings, and it had stopped. And the scene had shifted, and we were now back in the Shire with the green hills and the sunshine. The anxiety, the worry that had been constantly with me, always had gone, and it was quiet and calm on the inside. And that was pretty astonishing to start with. Then, a few weeks later, I noticed there'd been another effect. Now, I find it quite embarrassing to talk about, but it used to be that I couldn't handle delayed meals. If breakfast was going to be a long time after I woke up, I would get incredibly stressed about it. I would get really upset, often tearful. I would literally be in tears if anything slightly went wrong at that time of day. I'd get really confused. So if I had to cook the breakfast, I couldn't work out what to do, which thing to cook first. Cooked breakfast all my life, I know how to do it. But somehow confusion just took over. I couldn't manage. So if I was visiting friends or family, I'd always have my pockets filled with nuts and things to eat as emergency rations to stop this thing kicking in. It's really unpleasant and really embarrassing. A few weeks into the Paleo thing, I realised it had stopped happening. And that if I now wanted to miss breakfast, I could. It was massively liberating. Apart from the fact that I thought that I was slightly bonkers, it had been really inconvenient. Now it had gone. You can't imagine how delighted I was when I realised this had happened. And I thought, right, I need an explanation. And luckily I talked to my good friend James Tripp about it, and he had a recommendation from his coach Steve Chandler for an interesting book. It was called Grain Brain by David Perlmutter, and it's coming out in the UK this week, I believe. But I was able to get it from Amazon, so that was fine. And Perlmutter is a fascinating man. He is primarily a neurologist, but he also is a nutritionist. He belongs to the American Nutritional Association, I don't know what they call it, but you know, the top one. And his book is really well argued and really well backed up by references and research. So this is not just some bozo saying this is my bright idea. This guy knows what he's talking about. And he points out that the primary cause of degenerative brain conditions is inflammation. Now, you know about inflammation. If you've got a sore wrist and it's inflamed, you know, it goes red and hot and it's painful. And that's inflammation in its sort of purest form. It's supposed to be a sort of short-term emergency alert system for the body. However, it's possible for people to suffer chronic inflammation, and particularly chronic inflammation in the brain. And we don't feel inflammation in the brain in the same way that we do in the wrist, because we don't have pain receptors there. So we can have massive brain inflammation without knowing about it. And Perlmutter points out that the modern diet, the modern typical American diet, is causing chronic inflammation in two specific ways. One, by being high carbohydrate, it increases the level of insulin in the body and increases the level of sugar in the blood. Now, you guys know about type 2 diabetes and how it's possible to become a diabetic by eating a poor diet over years. What the experts now realise is that Alzheimer's is a kind of diabetes. It's an illness for one of the primary causes of this disease is high insulin, high blood sugar. And this can also be true of other forms of dementia. So high carbohydrate is the first scary thing. The second interesting thing is gluten. Now, the level of gluten, that's the sticky stuff in wheat and other grains, the stuff you get that makes croissants and baguettes so addictively lovely. The level of gluten in modern wheat is massively higher than it was 50 years ago because it gives us that mouthfeel. Now, Perlmutter says that about 40% of people are sensitive to gluten, such that it causes inflammation in the brain. So when he finds a client with a neurological condition that can't currently be explained, his first response is to suggest a gluten-free diet. And 9 times out of 10, it works. He has some amazing stories in his book, including a young man who's spent years, he was in his 20s, and he'd spent years believing he was autistic. And the gluten-free diet sorted it out immediately. So many other conditions he talks about as well, multiple sclerosis, lots of other stuff. So, but I won't recount the whole book here. But his primary point is that your diet can affect your brain. And if you make only 2 changes to your diet, cut out the carbs and remove gluten, at least for a few weeks, until you see whether it makes a difference to you. It's not that difficult to do. There's some fabulous resources out there on the web. If you look up Paleo, P-A-L-E-O diet, you'll find loads of sites and fabulous recipes. They're really enjoyable to make and cook. And have a go. My experience suggests it can't hurt and it might help enormously. Why not try it? Now, this video has been a bit of a departure for me. It's not the kind of subject I normally video blog about, but if you're interested in hearing more about this, let me know by either pressing the like button or commenting underneath or ask any questions underneath, because this is a subject I'm absolutely passionate about at the moment. And if you want to hear more, I'm happy to make more videos.